Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 Artstor user group. Before we begin today's session, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available after this event. Now let's get started. We're here to provide you with updates on the Artstor to JSTOR integration, answer your questions, and help you prepare for the retirement of the Artstor website in 2024. Before we go any further, let's do some introductions. My name is Sarah. I am the Communications Assistant here at Ithaca and the Chair of the Observances, Events, and Celebrations Network. I'll be joined today by our panelists who will provide updates and answers on the migration from Artstor to JSTOR. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Alex.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Alex Houston. I am Senior Marketing Manager here at Ithaca. Before coming here in January of 2022, I was Director of Marketing and Strategy at the Seminary Co-op Bookstores in Chicago, which is one of the largest scholarly booksellers in the world. For the past year, I have led our Artstor to JSTOR communications strategy, and I will hand off to Peter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Vlahakis. I'm a Senior Product Manager responsible for product development of Artstor on JSTOR. I've been at Ithaca for over 12 years now, and my role for this initiative is to ensure that our teams are working together to deliver a really great holistic experience for teaching and learning with images, and by soliciting and listening to your feedback from your users and the participant community. Dana?
Hi, I'm Dana Howard. I work on the partner and user education team, and I'm a former educator who used both Artstor and JSTOR in that former life. My colleague, Paul Cuneo, is a leader on our support team, and he is with us as well, addressing questions behind the scenes. He will say hello in the chat. It's fine to post questions as they occur to you. Paul will answer them in the last quarter of the webinar. And I'll go ahead and turn my webcam off and send it back to Alex.
Great, thank you, Dana, and thank you everyone who is here today. And today is all about making sure that you, our Artstor participants, are getting your questions answered about the migration. When you registered for this webinar, many of you shared questions, and today's program is going to speak to as many of those questions as possible. Since we can't cover everything in just an hour, we also did send a pre-event Q&A that addressed pre-submitted questions. We will put a link to a handout in the chat, and that'll include that Q&A along with other information that we will share throughout this webinar. As Dana mentioned, you're welcome to ask questions in the question box as they come to mind, and after the event, we will send out a recording of this webinar along with a tidied version of the live Q&A that we'll have at the end. So again, today is really about focusing on your questions and getting those answered and making sure that you understand and are supported in your move to JSTOR. And to do that, we'll start with an integration overview, including why it's happening, what it means for pricing and billing, and what the timeline is. From there, we'll share some platform news and plans, as well as address some frequently asked questions pertaining to the platform. Finally, we'll take a closer look at what's available to you now with a demo of JSTOR's image functionality and a walkthrough of the support resources we have put together for you. Then we'll close out with that live Q&A. Now let's get started with an overview of the Artstor to JSTOR integration. Since 2016, Artstor has been a part of Ithaca, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to improve access to education around the world. Our work centers on making scholarly resources more effective and more affordable through products and services that we build and refine in close partnership with our community, that is, the librarians, scholars, educators, and institutions that we serve. Next slide, please. Excellent. And over the past few years, we did hear from our community that their needs were changing. So there were shifts in the broader research and education landscape that were really amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. And these were challenging our institutional partners to enhance their digital offerings in the face of budget cuts, while at the same time maintaining high standards of quality and also supporting diverse scholarship. To help institutions meet these challenges, we began the project to bring Artstor onto JSTOR and to optimize JSTOR for working and teaching with images. With JSTOR's collections and functionality on the with Artstor's collections and functionality on the JSTOR platform, users can access a world-class collection of images, texts, and primary sources in one place. We'll cover the details of how this works in practice a little later, but for now, suffice it to say that this means improved workflows and only one platform to train on. In terms of reach and impact, having Artstor's collection on a separate platform also did something of a disservice to that content. JSTOR has over 81 million users, far more than Artstor, the platform, and making Artstor's rich global content accessible on the JSTOR platform will make it, and the arts more generally, more visible and accessible on participants' campuses and beyond. We're confident this will help drive usage and ensure that your investment in the Artstor collections is worth your while. Streamlining onto one platform also means we can invest our resources fully in enhancing its functionality instead of dividing attention between websites. Finally, all this means lower maintenance and support costs, which I'm happy to say we translate to lower fees for you. Based on years of participant feedback and in anticipation of those cost savings, we were able to revise and reduce our fee structure for Artstor to save institutions up to 30% on their annual fees. While Artstor does remain a separate content package from other JSTOR content options, fees for existing participants are being reduced in a phased approach. The majority of those reductions were applied to 2022 renewals, but for some communities, further savings are coming in 2023 and 2024. If you have questions about how this applies to you, please contact your outreach partner at the email address on the screen, and that's also going to be in that handout that we've shared in the chat. I also want to note that there will be no change in billing process. We got some questions about this. Since Artstor and JSTOR are already part of the same organization, billing is already handled by the same team, and nothing's going to change in your billing cycle or billing contacts. And then finally, I want to mention that some institutions might require an updated institutional participation agreement before August 2024 when the Artstor website is retired. You can find more information and a link to an e-acceptance form in your handout, which we're going to share again in the chat for those who might have joined a little later. Okay, speaking of August of 2024 and the Artstor website retirement, let's talk a little more about the timeline. First of all, yes, I said 2024. We've known there's a little confusion maybe about the year because it is a bit of a ways out, but I want to be really clear that we are talking about 2024, next year, not this year. We wanted you to have as much time as possible to make this transition and for us to have time to continue to fine-tune the JSTOR platform to really meet your needs before retiring the Artstor website. In January of this year, we announced the Artstor retirement date as August 1st, 2024. We'd heard from you that you needed a date in order to plan and communicate with your users, and we wanted to give that to you. Also in January, we set the date for today's webinar as our next touch point, where we could speak to some of the questions you voiced after the announcement. And again, this program is designed to do exactly that. There will be plenty of platform updates and webinars in the meantime, which you'll hear more about from my colleagues. But our next big migration milestone is that by the end of 2023, we'll have completed our push to migrate all of the contributed collections currently on Artstor onto JSTOR. Contributed content is shared on the Artstor platform by institutions who participate in JSTOR Forum, and that content is distinct from the licensed and open Artstor content. My colleague Peter will talk a bit more about the different types of content shortly, but for now, I'll say that having all that content on JSTOR by the end of the year will then allow us to copy all Artstor image groups to JSTOR in January of 2024. Peter will speak more about that shortly. Then on August 1st, 2024, the Artstor website will be retired and all users will be redirected to JSTOR. I'll hand things off to Peter now to share how we've gotten the JSTOR platform ready for you since we last met.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So yeah, I'm going to highlight some content updates and key platform changes since September 2022, kind of picking up from the last webinar we did at the end of August 2022. But I also want to acknowledge that some of you are probably engaging with the integration effort for the first time. So if you want to catch up on the full history, we suggest visiting the migration guide that's linked in the handout that's been shared in the chat. Dana is also going to demo many of the updates that I'm going to talk about later in the show, so I won't go into great detail for each one of them. But I want to start by highlighting the great progress we made towards getting the Artstor content published to JSTOR. You know, I've broken this out by the licensed Artstor collections, the open Artstor collections, the public collections, and then some new content that I'll talk about. We're so close to having all of the licensed content. We've got 3 more collections to go that we're working very hard to get cleared and published. All of the open Artstor collections have already been on JSTOR for a while, and you know, we've seen over half of the public collections on Artstor. And those are the ones, as Alex mentions, that are contributed by our institutions, our participants. Over half of those have been published to JSTOR already. And, you know, we're very happy to see that so many of them, of our participants contributing those collections, have already seen the value of getting that public content to users on JSTOR. And we hope to have the rest of that on JSTOR by the end of the year. But I'm also really excited to talk about all of the new special collections that are on JSTOR via our Shared Collections initiative. And this is content that's only available on JSTOR, and we're adding more and more of it just about every day now. We were approaching 1,000 collections. As I say here, we're at over 950. And again, these are new, available to your users on JSTOR alongside all of the existing Artstor content that's already been published to JSTOR. Okay, so now I'll go through and touch on some of the bigger feature releases that have happened since last September. And remember that you'll get to see these in action during the demo. So the first one that is highlighted on the right here is our example of image recommenders shown as related images on the item page. And we've invested a lot really into creating a powerful image search and browse experience and learning to do good image recommendations for aiding in the discovery of related content. And we're not done. There's a lot more that we can do. There's a lot of exciting things to try and experiment with. And this is continues to be one of the parts of the integrated platform that I'm really most excited about. And this is, you know, it's important to say that bringing text and images together for discovery, that makes a lot of sense to folks. There's a lot of excitement around that. We're certainly excited about that, but we're also really committed to providing an excellent search and discovery experience for users specifically looking for image content, whether that be from the licensed collections, open Artstor content, or the collections that institutions are contributing to JSTOR. Next are some improvements that went out for organizing content and collaborating within JSTOR Workspace folders. And just for reference, the JSTOR Workspace folder is the counterpart to the image group on Artstor. And so earlier this year, we added support for a series of bulk editing actions in Workspace and the ability to copy folders that have been shared with you to really support collaborative teaching and learning. And then the last one here is we've added the ability to bulk save and cite from search results. Dana, excuse me, will demo this later. I'm also really excited about this because you can do this and the JSTOR search results load on continuous scroll. So you don't have to paginate and reselect in order to save a lot of content or cite a lot of content at once. And you know, we've seen this, I think this should be a really nice time saver for users who especially need to do kind of a quick find and save for lots of images that they need to review later. A couple other ones, not so specific to images that I want to point out, but important updates nonetheless, is we released a new mobile-friendly navigation on JSTOR that I've seen really improve the engagement from users on mobile devices. The goal really is to enable a quality experience on JSTOR from anywhere, anytime. So for example, if you're in a museum, you can easily see examples of other artists' work on your phone, as well as related scholarship, and save that content to review later. So I encourage you to try it out on your phone and let us know what you think. And then earlier this year, we also introduced a series of changes to how users are able to authenticate on JSTOR through their institution to get access to that licensed content, and through their personal account to access Workspace and other tools. And they can do this now from any page on JSTOR without taking them away to a different page to have to log in. And this is cool to me because it really reduces barriers for both on and off-campus users. And then finally, last October, we had a dedicated admin webinar that covered the new JSTOR admin site that we redesigned to really with an eye for supporting Artstor on JSTOR. Since then, we've added a new usage dashboard, and that's what's featured on the right here. The image usage chart that you see shows Artstor usage across the JSTOR and Artstor platforms by users at your institution. And that's kind of a cool view into what's happening during this transition period. And remember that if you're an Artstor participant, users at your institution already have access to the licensed Artstor content on JSTOR. Okay, so now I want to give you some insight into some of the bigger things that we have lined up and our best guess as to when you can expect to see them on JSTOR. Of course, the timing could change, but it's important to say that all of these things will be completed before we retire to the Artstor site. I'd recommend signing up for platform updates from us and checking in on the migration guide, which does a nice job kind of in a table layout of highlighting what Artstor and image-related features are live and what's in progress. And then there's a link to the sign-up form in the handout that we'll share once again in chat. So a really kind of low-effort way to stay in touch. So the first on this list is audio on JSTOR. It's coming out this summer in July. I'm really excited about this. Artstor has some audio files, especially in the public collections, that we'll be working with institutions to publish to JSTOR. And we also hope to, significantly grow audio content in JSTOR through the Shared Collections Initiative and the new collections that are coming onto JSTOR. And I really like what I've seen from the project so far, incorporating things like transcripts into the user experience, into the UI. We were just never able to do that on Artstor very well. And this is really going to improve discoverability and accessibility for those files. So stay tuned for more there. Video, we don't have an estimate for when this is coming out just yet, but it will be supported before the Artstor website's retired, and we'll share more info about what to expect there. Another kind of key improvement for Workspace and organizing content is what we're calling search within Workspace. So, it's really important that we make it fast and easy to organize content for teaching and learning. That's kind of a must. The Workspace bulk actions that I talked about earlier are a great step in that direction. But we know that, especially for our power users who have a lot of image groups on Artstor that will become Workspace folders and just lots of content within, they rely on search to be able to find things when there's just too much. And so expect to be able to search for items and folders in Workspace sometime the second half of this year. Another sort of migration activity that I want to call out here that Alex had mentioned on the timeline is we've had a lot of questions about what support we can provide to help ensure that users' image groups make it into their Workspace on JSTOR. And we know that's really important. We want to have as much as we can just set up when people migrate. So in January 2024, we're going to copy all users' image groups that are on Artstor into their workspace as workspace folders on JSTOR. And again, we just think this is the right move to ensure that they have what they need and take most of the burden off your shoulders to ensure that this happens for image group migration as well. The last on this list, also lots of questions about personal collections. So this is a functionality on Artstor where users can upload their own items onto Artstor, and we will support this on JSTOR. This will be done in the workspace. We expect to see this in the first half of next year, so we don't think it's going to be ready this year, but this is something you can expect to see before we retire the Artstor website. And I want to note that if you or users are using the personal collections feature on Artstor, you can already actually move those items to JSTOR Workspace by adding them to an image group and then copying them over into a workspace folder. And we have a self-service copy tool to do that. And then again, that's going to happen for everyone in January. Okay, want to make sure we speak to the most frequently asked questions about the platform. Again, we've got an FAQ where these answers are going to be available, and this will be on the migration guide as well, alongside the rest of that content. I really want to take the opportunity to thank folks like Dana and Alex and Paul, who you're here from, and many of our support team for all of their excellent work on pulling that FAQ together to make sure that we're answering your questions, we're documenting those answers, and there's a place where you can check on that very, very easily. And so the one that I'd mentioned earlier around what can we do to help ensure that your users' image groups make it to JSTOR. We want to make sure that these aren't lost in transition. I mentioned that there is a self-service tool that we released last year, and we've seen some adoption of that where users can by themselves copy the image group over into JSTOR Workspace. But we again really want to make sure that you can rest easy when it comes to image groups and getting them to JSTOR. So we're going to do this one-time copy in January of 2024. Why January 2024? Because we expect to have most of the remaining public collections on Artstor over to JSTOR by then, and we really want to give your users, especially faculty, who we know need some time to get used to a change like this, some time during that final semester in 2024 before Artstor is retired, to try out JSTOR without having to copy the groups over themselves. And so, the main question that I wanted to address here is, yes, we are going to help. Here's the basics of how and when. I'm sure that you might have some new questions swirling about the specific details of what this looks like in JSTOR Workspace and how that works with changes, that you might make before and after. I just want to assure you that we've got that in hand, but there's a lot to explain there, and we're already throwing a lot at you today. So what we're going to do is send out some documentation in advance as we get closer to this date in January, and that will be on the migration guide as well. So you'll know what to expect when that comes around. And then in the meantime, we encourage you to try copying them over using the self-service tool. Give workspace folders a try. Encourage your faculty to do the same, and then send us feedback or questions. There's also going to be an opportunity this summer to have users from your institution participate in user testing for this workflow, if that's something you're interested in or that you're interested in. And there'll be a question in the post-webinar survey to indicate that you'd be interested in doing that. Okay, a lot of questions about search as well that I want to make sure I address here. And this is, I think naturally there's been a lot of interest in how the results might differ between JSTOR and Artstor. So I want to address the topic of the differences you might see between the two in some cases. And I want to start by acknowledging that, it's really hard to say that any two search engines are the same. And JSTOR's goal isn't to exactly reproduce results on Artstor. That would be pretty impossible, and we would actually be doing users, I think, a disservice in the long run as we expand the image content on JSTOR and work to invest in improving the connectivity, between images and across content types. So the most notable difference you might see in results likely comes from the difference in content. So JSTOR already has most of the image content from Artstor, but not quite all of it, as I had mentioned, and we're working to get the rest of that. But it's never going to reach a zero, right, as that gap, as institutions decide, even down at the item level, what items in their public collections they want to put on JSTOR. But more importantly, as we saw earlier, there's almost 1,000 new public collections contributed by institutions, and many of these are made up of images, which is a great thing. Artstor does not have this content. So the content being searched, even just in the image search on JSTOR versus Artstor, will never really produce the same results. And we think that's a good thing, because it means that we have opportunities to deliver more relevant results for your users. And additionally, we're continually experimenting with relevancy improvements. This is, as I said earlier, a big emphasis for us. And doing this requires leveraging new technologies, of course, that Artstor just doesn't use. And and we also want to do this in programmatic and sustainable ways as our corpus of content gets larger and larger. For example, factoring things in like image quality and resolution. There's a lot of different opportunities here to improve relevancy. And additionally, some of the results that you may have seen on JSTOR are driven by more manually curated connections that simply aren't sustainable and have sort of reached their limits. JSTOR search allows us to separately optimize for image results and text results using some of these new technologies while bringing them together to improve relevance across the content types. So as always, if you have questions or feedback about JSTOR search, please reach out to support@jstor.org. Okay, we've had some questions about redirects as well, so I just want to lay that out. Nothing is going to change until August 1st, 2024. On that date, library.artstor.org will redirect to jstor.org, and both the item stable links and image group links will redirect to their counterparts on JSTOR. And those will be in place for at least a year per the recommended best practices. But we really encourage you to, as soon as you're ready to make that transition to JSTOR, and encourage your users to do the same, to start updating links to the JSTOR site. Okay, and then I want to speak to support during the transition time, and I want to make it really clear that all of the core functionality that makes Artstor work will receive the same support through August 1st, 2024. Content, viewing, downloading content, search, browse, image groups, authentication will receive the same level of support. Our support team will maintain dedicated support for the Artstor site during that time. And as we get closer to Artstor, I just want to be transparent that, as maybe some smaller things arise, we may elect to try not to fix those problems so that we can really focus on ensuring that JSTOR is fully ready to support Artstor users across the board. Okay, I'll hand it over to Dana for the demo. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I'm not going to turn my webcam on so that when I'm doing the demo, you can see the whole screen. I know for some librarians, JSTOR is not a platform you use regularly for images. So I will both demonstrate the platform's image functionality and walk you through some key resources we have to support you and your colleagues in this transition. There's a lot you can do with search and with the workspace to find and discover content to use in teaching. My aim here is to give you a general feel for an image-centric search and save workflow. While we do have an advanced image search page, we have been working to make image search more intuitive to allow you to stay on the image results page rather than moving in and out of advanced search, while having greater discoverability across collections. And once you decide to open an image item, we have initiated those recommenders that Peter mentioned, and I'll show that to you. I'll also give you a tour of the JSTOR workspace and its folders. Folders within Workspace are like the next generation of the Artstor image group that you're accustomed to on Artstor. When we copy your image groups to JSTOR, they will become folders in your workspace. Everything I'm sharing today is in a LibGuide or on the support site. Sarah has put that handout in the chat, and those resources are linked there for you to explore at your own pace. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the resources that I think are especially valuable to you as you prepare for this transition. Now, if you have an Artstor account, you already have a JSTOR account. So when you log in, you have access to your JSTOR workspace and can quickly save what you find on JSTOR. As with Artstor, if you're not logged in with your personal account, you cannot save content on JSTOR. Remote access on JSTOR through personal account pairing lasts 365 days, and an account is seamlessly paired when you log in from on campus or through your library portal, meaning that if you log in from on campus once in those 365 days, it's going to re-up and the 365 counter will start again. So users are not going to see many barriers in that respect. Searching just for images. We received several questions in our pre-webinar survey about how a search for images, a content type so different from text, can be achieved on the JSTOR platform, and how the faceting that we are used to with advanced search on Artstor works on JSTOR. The equivalent image search link to library.artstor.org on JSTOR is jstor.org/images. As with on Artstor, this link will search for images in licensed Artstor collections, institutional collections, and public content. You can also begin an image search from the search bar on any page, as I'll demonstrate. And now let's get to the demo. So here I am. I'm logged into, I'm authenticated through my institution, access provided by JSTOR, which is my institution, but I am not currently logged in. I want to point out that search, advanced search, and image search is available to you through the search drop-down menu if you don't use a direct link. But I generally use this search bar and just click on images. So I'm going to begin a search for a favorite artist. And I want to point one thing out. As I have been typing Hepworth's name, you'll see that the options for how to search for Hepworth have come up in a drop-down menu. I can search by creator if I'd like. I'm not going to do that now because I want to get content both by and about Hepworth, but that is a possibility. I like to do very broad content searches because I want to capture a lot to begin with and then narrow down my search results. So again, I'm not logged in, but I am authenticated, so I will be able to see these items. I can scroll down, and as I'm scrolling down, you might notice it's telling me how many images I have seen already. So now I'm up to 26 and scrolling down, and now I'm coming across images that I'm not familiar with, and I did a little research. These are surgery notes and drawings that Barbara Hepworth did in 1948. And so they're appearing here in my Hepworth search, along with the canonical sculptures that I'm used to. Now, right here from the thumbnail, I've got a lot of information. I've got the title, the artist name, and the date. And I also have the collection name, which for me is very valuable because I know certain collections are really, really high quality. As I mouse over, you'll see that I have the option to save just a single item here in the lower corner. But in the upper corner, I can actually save several items at once. And you might notice that as I clicked that arrow, and I'll do it again, as I click on that, you'll see a red boxes show up to either cite or save that item. And I can continue to scroll down. I can continue to choose items. And as I do that, that bar is sticky. It is saved. It's there with me, which I really appreciate. Now I'm going to click save. And since I'm not logged in, I'm getting the invitation to log in. JSTOR has not saved this username and password. This is saved because I have it saved through Google. And I'm going to log in here. I could also use the Google single sign-on if my institution had that. But here I'm logging in, and it's taking me right back to where I was. So I'm not even losing track of where I was in my search. So this continuous scroll, I think, is really valuable to play with a search for a while, get a sense of the lay of the land before you start to narrow your search results. But we'll do that now. At the bottom of the screen, there's an arrow that says back to top. And I click on that arrow, and it will take me back to the top of the page. So I'd like to draw your attention now to the Refine Results sidebar. I can narrow by access type if I'd like. I'm sorry, I can narrow by access type, either everything or content I can access. I can also search within my search results. So if I'd like to add another keyword, I can do that here. I can also narrow by date range. And as with Artstor, all of the classifications I'm used to on Artstor appear on JSTOR. And again, only the classifications relevant to my search terms appear. So we don't have paintings by Barbara Hepworth, so they're not showing up here. Instead, drawings and watercolors, because those are still lumped together in those Artstor classifications. Geography is organized by continent. If you can't remember what continent the country you're looking for is in, you can do a search for it. If I open up Europe, it's going to give me the countries that are represented here. Of course, I expect United Kingdom because Hepworth is British, but I don't expect France. So I'm going to investigate that one by just clicking on it. And it's going to point out that this is by a French photographer. And so that's why it's showing up linked to France, and it's a portrait of the artist. I'm going to remove that filter. I particularly like that I can remove and add filters because it allows me to do a lot of browsing. Now, my favorite browsing place is classifications. I'm sorry, not classifications, is collections down here. And if I click on collections, I've got all the collections in the order of appearance. And so I can see that I've got art on file here that has 7. I know that's a great collection. I'm going to choose that. The Fine Arts Museum at San Francisco, the Phillips collection. You see, as I'm adding these, they are appearing in my scroll through. So I have them all available as thumbnails to look at. And I want to point out, we're really happy that we have just added the Museum of Modern Art content to JSTOR, and so that is going to show up as well. Now, I can delete or add any of these filters as I go, but I've got a nice group here. I would like to then open one of these items to show you how you can save from the image item page. And I keep saying item because we're going to have more than just images. We'll be having this video and audio content soon. So I'm getting used to just calling it an item. And all the things you're used to, being able to zoom in, to compare, to go into full screen, you can do all of that. You also have the ability to cite, share, and save and download right from here. Now, if I choose save, I can create a folder because I'm logged in now. So I can create my Hepworth folder, and that's handy. So I can start adding the content I found directly to that folder. As I scroll down, I can see the metadata for this image, and I can also see the related image content that Peter mentioned before. It's giving me other works by Hepworth and then works by contemporaries as well. As I scroll down further, here are related texts. This is something that we're experimenting with now, and that's actually the first page of that surgery sketchbook that has Barbara Hepworth's words in it, which is a nice thing to share with students. So now I'm going to show you the workspace. I know I've saved this item because it says saved right here, which is handy. And now I'm going to take you directly to my workspace. That choice appears on every page, as does your search choice. My Hepworth folder is here with my one little item I added to it. I'm looking at this content in gallery view. I could look at it in list view. It's not as visual in list view, but the same format, folders first and then items. Moving to gallery view, I can see content in my folders a little bit better in gallery view. And I see that I've got these items that I added when I was prompted to log in. So I'm going to take these, and you'll notice that once I check marked those, that sticky thing showed up again, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to move those to my Hepworth folder now. And click move. And now as I refresh my screen, you're going to see that the content I saved before is coupled with the one item that I saved earlier. I'm going to open this folder for you. This is an example of a folder that was an image group. I made this image group when I started working for Artstor years ago. It was a group that this was content that I would use in teaching about scale when I was a teacher. And I just wanted you to see an example of what they look like. This group had an image group description. It shows up here. And let's start at the top. You've got 3 dots after the title. That allows me to rename, edit the description, move, duplicate, or delete. I can also begin to present directly from here. I can share a link of this folder. I can also export. I can export images to PowerPoint, a reference list to PDF, which is something that's new on JSTOR, and then that you don't have on Artstor, and then images to zip, something you're used to from Artstor. I can also create subfolders. So I could create a parent folder for all of my AAH 101 classes and then tuck in every single week's lectures into that as I'm making them. And when I share the parent folder, I'm sharing all the other folders as well. So it allows me to free up. I don't have to share a bunch of little links. I just have this one link that I can share, and I can turn the link sharing on or off as needed. So there, I copied my link. I can put it in my learning management system, and ta-da. But of course, before I want students to look at this, I need to rearrange these images. So I can just drag them and move them where I'll need them in my presentation. I want to show you one more folder, and then we'll open it up for questions. This is a folder created by a colleague of mine and shared with me. So this folder automatically is titled Copy of Botanicals. And my colleague's folder is called Botanicals. And as you can see, it's in my workspace. I can do whatever I want with it. You see, I have all sorts of ability to manipulate this content. I also have a link back to the folder she shared in the order that she shared the content with the content she shared. It allows me to see how she had it organized and also see anything she's added since I last copied it, but it doesn't let me do much else. You see, I can't move these things around. I can export it and I can copy it. If I copy it again, I'll make myself another copy of Botanicals. So this is my copied folder. That was a copy of. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, so I'm going to stop while I'm ahead and take you back into the slide deck and show you the resources where this stuff is laid out in a much less frenetic way. We've created several resources that can support Artstor admins in preparing for the transition from Artstor to JSTOR in 2024. We know that we all need different kinds of resources, so we've built in redundancy to allow you to choose based on your needs and your institution's needs. Artstor on JSTOR migration guide is the first link in that handout that Sarah has shared. I would suggest librarians begin there. And then the final link on that handout is a link to a LibGuide that provides both brief videos as well as tips on working with your JSTOR workspace. We'll be adding some more videos to that LibGuide and some more tips on searching and saving. I have two other resources I want to specifically point out, but I do want to let you know that all of our videos are available on YouTube, and if you subscribe, you'll get notification as soon as we add another video. Now, this is the slide deck for reuse. When you click on this link, you are prompted to copy it. And after you copy it, it's yours, just like an image group, just like a folder copied within JSTOR. So this link is something that you can use to then add or delete any of the slides that we've created for you. But within each of these slides, in the speaker's notes, we provided you with key points that you may want to make about this particular topic, as well as where to go for more information, and also the ACRL visual literacy standards and some activities you can do with students. So if you've got 10 minutes with the class or a whole hour to work with students, this slide deck could be a very helpful start for you so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The other resource I want to mention is the Welcome to JSTOR from Artstor page. It's a great one to share with your faculty. The ability to copy image groups appears right smack dab in the middle of the page. You can click on that and it will help your users copy a few image groups over if they'd like, so that they can play around with those. Remember, if you make a copy, it's not going to change what's on Artstor. It's going to be there on JSTOR. And then the other thing to let you know is we will be having orientation webinars in August, and we will focus one of those on working with images on JSTOR. So this ends our formal presentation, and I'm going to turn on my webcam and invite my colleagues to turn on theirs. All attendees will receive a follow-up survey after the event. We also want to remind you to contact support if you have any feedback on the platform changes as you experience them. That feedback gets recorded and forwarded to the right team for further investigation. Okay, let's get started with our questions.
Absolutely. My name is Paul. I am a Tier 2 lead in Ithaca's support team. I'll be taking over to lead us through a bit of Q&A based on the questions you've submitted in the box so far. We do have a large number of participants today, a large number of questions. We may not be able to get through everything. We are going to try to focus on questions that have a broad relevance. Again, we'd encourage you to follow up with us at support@jstor.org with any very specific problems, or if we're not able to get to yours today. So I will start us off here with Kim, who asks, sometimes less is more. Faculty may want to have students only search images and not be distracted by all the other material available on JSTOR. And she wants to make sure that we will have a link to just the image platform available in a database list. So I think Peter touched on this a lot during his part of the presentation already. We see a lot of value for users in bringing images and articles together, but we're also very committed to having a great image-only search experience. In terms of providing a link from your databases, there are several options. I think the simplest would just be jstor.org/images, which you can get to from our search drop-down menu at the top of JSTOR. Any searches from this page will return only images. On a similar note from Ali, do you have any recommendations for how to describe JSTOR plus Artstor in an A to Z database list and website? Should there be one access point or two? I do think that one's sort of up to you, what works best for your users. There are definitely options you can use for an Artstor link if you want that. If you're looking to link for the search limited to images, this page is a great option. If you're looking to link specifically to the licensed Artstor collections only, rather than all image content on JSTOR, you can also link to jstor.org/site/Artstor, which is limited to only the Artstor groups. David asks, is there a way for me to tell if all of our local collections have already been migrated? So as an end user for your institution, you can visit JSTOR and use the Browse menu. There will be an item at the bottom of that list, which would take you directly to all collections on JSTOR that are published by your institution. If you have some missing right now and you have any questions about how to get those on JSTOR, I'd encourage you to check out our migration guide, and we do have a specific forum town hall coming up very soon. I see we also have a number of questions about the plan for the image group copy over process that will be happening in January. We have a number of admins asking about the potential to opt out of this, and I see some concerns related to that. Users who've already migrated their groups. I see some concern about zombie or inactive users who may have old or unmaintained groups that you don't want to bring over. The first thing I'd say about this is that the copy tool we use is non-destructive. So the mass copy that would be happening in January would add a folder in the user's workspaces containing their items as they exist on Artstor at that moment. It would not overwrite any folders that already exist in the user's JSTOR workspace. In terms of these zombie groups or inactive users, I don't think it's necessarily as big of an issue on JSTOR because other people's image groups are not automatically shared with others at your institution. These zombie folders should not be automatically popping up in your users' workspaces, in other words. But I would just add that our plans for this mass copy process aren't totally nailed down yet. We'd love more feedback of this kind, more specific questions if you see pain points about this. And again, if you're interested in getting in sort of in the beta user testing for this process, there will be something you can check off in the post-webinar survey to indicate your interest there.
Peter, did you want to add to that, or because I sense some concern, and I want to make sure people understand we're not going to clutter up their workspace with a whole bunch of new folders. They're going to have it segregated out, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, Paul, that's a great answer. But while we don't have all of it figured out, I think we know for sure that we need to make it really easy to group all of that one-time copied stuff into, it's going to be grouped in a single parent folder. So for users that have either already copied their groups over into JSTOR Workspace or decide that they want to do it their own after January 2024, it will be really, really easy to just select everything that was auto-copied and remove it. And that auto-copy isn't, as Paul said, isn't going to overwrite or update anything that's done outside of that. So we're really doing this as more of an insurance policy to make sure that for the folks who haven't touched it, haven't touched the copying the groups over, that if they show up last minute, they're like, oh no, I've got to learn this new process. Our goal is to get them on their way as quickly as we can, and having the groups there is, I think, just going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. We do have a semi-related or tangentially related, at least, question from Charlie, who asks, will it be possible to browse and search for workspaces shared with you by other members from your institution, that is, in the future? Currently, I think you can only get to a shared workspace via a link. So I think Charlie's understanding is correct here. You do need a link to access a shared folder, although once you visit it, you will have the ability to copy that group over to your personal workspace. But in terms of, the possibility of browse for shared workspace functionality, I think I'd pass that over to Peter if that's something that's occurred to you, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, that's you're not the first to ask about that. I think that's something that we're considering as we learn more about folder sharing and what's really working well there, and what other things we might consider to do to make that even easier. Folder sharing on JSTOR is done at the institution level. You know, if you've got a folder that you want to that you need to share for collaboration or classroom or whatever, you can share that with anyone that's authenticated at your institution. So no, I appreciate that feedback, and like I said, that's something that we've been considering.
Great. Sarah Beck asks, if a user's group includes video and video is not ready by January, will they have to recopy over after the fact, or will they automatically move once they are available? The answer here, I think, is that we intend to have all the relevant file types supported prior to the mass migration. But Peter, I'm wondering if that lines up with what you're thinking.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that again, Paul?
Sure. So if a user has a group on Artstor that contains video content and video is not ready by January, will they have to recopy that group over again to JSTOR?
Got it. Thanks. No, those will automatically appear. So if you copy a group over to Workspace and there's an item in there that's not on JSTOR yet, when that item gets published, it automatically appears in the Workspace folder. You don't have to recopy it or stay on top of that.
For those of you who are wondering what I'm doing, we had a question asking about present mode, and so I'm just showing it off while we're talking for that question.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana, for the multitasking. Susan asks, the last time I tried using the Artstor statistics on JSTOR, they weren't the same as what I exported from Artstor. Has that feature been improved? So in terms of the Artstor specific reports from the JSTOR admin site, I believe that the only one we currently have is the Artstor JSTOR cross-platform usage report. We don't yet support the Artstor user engagement report, which may be the one you're thinking of from the Artstor report site, but we are looking to support user engagement metrics on the JSTOR platform in the future. I don't know that we have a clear date for that feature, however.
Yeah, I can add just a little color to that. That's right. I know the team that does the admin and reporting is looking at like what a version of that report would look like on JSTOR, what's going to be the most valuable there in the context of the integrated platform. So if you have some things that you really rely on there or appreciate, definitely let us know what that is. We'd love to talk.
Okay, I do see we are at 1:59 right now, and I'm not sure I can get through any more of the many questions in here, but we do have a lot of great ones. I'd encourage you to check out some of the links that are provided from the handout as a starting point, and where we can, we will follow up with you with more specifics about any questions we weren't able to answer today.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Thank you. As a reminder, attendees will receive an email including the recording of this webinar. That'll land with you sometime early next week. And in the meantime, you will get that follow-up survey that you are invited and encouraged to fill out. That should arrive in about an hour. So thank you so much. We'll see you again soon, and do stay in touch and keep your questions coming, and we're here to help and support you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.